Okay, so I am just about 30% into Liar, Dreamer, Thief by Maria Dong, and I am going to have to go in ahead and DNF this book. And let me tell you why. So, when I read the blurb of this book, it was about this girl who was stalking this guy, and she catches him on the bridge, and before he commits suicide, he tells her that his death and his suicide is all her fault. And so I thought it was going to be a very, like a thrillery story, and this is very much an exploration of mental health. And I'm not saying that this is a bad book. It is absolutely positively not. It's just my expectations going in were a lot different, and then so I'm really not in the headspace to read this book mentally right now. It is about this main character who obviously has some mental health issues, and it's the exploration of her mental health issues. It has a book within a book in it, which is one of those things that I really, really hate. She has been in love with these fantasy stories since she was really young, and it has some excerpts from the fantasy stories, and she kind of has an obsession with the fantasy stories, and she actually kind of sees the fantasy world in her everyday life. So it's definitely an exploration of mental health. She does have an unhealthy obsession with her coworker, who she thinks does commit suicide and says that, his death is her fault. So I'm going to DNF at 30%. It has nothing to do with the book. It has everything to do with me. So highly still recommend if you like stories about mental health. I would love to know what happens throughout the story, but I just don't have enough capacity mental health wise to continue on. So I'm going to start reading another new release, I think. So I just started Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies by Heather Fawcett. Super cute so far. I'm not very far in. I'm like 12% in, but I am liking it. We're following a woman who has traveled to do some more research on some fairies that she doesn't know about, so she can write about it because she researches fairies and writes about them. And so right now I'm just getting a little bit of the world building. I'm getting a little bit knowledge about the fairies and what they do. There's mean fairies, there's good fairies, there's all kinds of fairies, there's small fairies, there's human-like fairies. I'm hoping to enjoy this one. I think it's going to be very cozy, which I know I didn't really care for Legends and Lattes, which was really cozy. Well, I was disappointed in that book, but maybe this one will do me better. We'll see. I'll check back in when I'm further along. So I'm 5-ish% into Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies. I'm liking it. I almost DNF'd it shortly after I spoke to you last because it was kind of rocking slow for me and I wasn't jiving with the characters, but I kept on because I was like, not DNF another new release. So I kept on going, and when it hit about the 50% mark, I was like, yes, what I've been waiting for. And then now I'm at 65% and I'm really jiving with the characters. This does have, you would probably call this cozy fantasy. It's following our main character again, and she is kind of doing some research for her encyclopedia of fairies that she is trying to put together, because I think she studies somewhere, I can't remember, and this is what she does for a living, and she has traveled to this place where she's gonna study the different kind of fairies. There's a lot of different fairies in their world that have never been discovered or studied, and so that's kind of her goal. And she has this colleague that also comes unexpectedly on the trip with her, and there's going to be, I guess, it hasn't happened yet. It's 65%, but I think we're going to get a romance between the two of them, and he's kind of grumpy. She thinks he's just very grumpy, and I'm enjoying myself so far since I hit the 50% mark. I'll check in probably when I finish the book and let you guys know my final thoughts. So I finished Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies. I can't remember when I last checked in. I think I was pretty far into the book as it was. Finally finished it, really ended up adoring it. I think that it kind of didn't grip me in the beginning, and then it took off about the 50% mark, and then it got really fast paced there at the end. I ended up really enjoying the book and really enjoying these characters and really enjoying the little romance that we got in here. And I'm interested to see where the next books go and where the next books take us. So I ended up giving it 4 stars overall, even though I thought it was going to be just a 3-star read. But it was very cozy. Definitely don't go in here looking for an epic fantasy. Very cozy fantasy that has a little bit more of a plot to it, but a romance as well. Loved it. Loved it. I then started reading The Daughters of Izdihar by Hadir Elsbai, and this is an interesting book. This is supposed to be an adult fantasy, and it is following our two main points of view so far. I'm about 20% in, and this is a very much women's rights fantasy. We're following our main character. She has some magical abilities, and all she wants to do is learn how to use these, go fight in the army, but previously women have not been allowed to do that, and some laws and stuff are just now coming about that will allow women to go off and train to do these things, except at the last minute she learns that she has been arranged to marry someone. So that's the perspective that we're getting there. And then we are getting Genevieve's perspective, who is actually the lover of the man that the main character is arranged to marry. So she is very poor, and she is very big into the women's rights movement. So she's helping to lead this women's rights group. And so I think we're going to see a lot of women's rights stuff in here to go. I'm not quite understanding what the plot's going to be. Obviously there's some magic in this world, but I'm not quite sure how it's going to be used. And it's very political right now, so I don't know if it's just going to stay all about politics or if we're going to get some other story elements to it. So we'll have to see. I'm interested to know what's going to happen, and I'll update y'all when I get a little bit further in. Okay, so I finished The Daughters of Izdihar, and here's my thoughts. I gave this book 3 stars. I think that it's very, very heavy on women's rights and not heavy on the fantasy. So it does have elemental magic in it that we see every so often. There's this elemental magic, and women are forbidden to practice it, learn it, and all of that. And women are just now getting the chance to actually go to school to learn it, but they have to get permission from the man in their life. So it's very much a feminist, very much on women's rights, and more so than fantasy. So if you're looking for a real heavy fantasy, I would say this is probably not your big epic fantasy. It's just basically, to me, it's more about the study of women's rights. Yes, there are some fantasy elements in it that are used, elemental magic. I'm assuming that this is a duology. I'm assuming that the second book in the series is going to see more of the magic system, and we've done all of this women's rights stuff big in the first book, and maybe we'll get some fighting fantasy elemental magic in the second. I'm not sure if I'm going to continue on. It was not a bad book at all. Just totally, I knew that it was a feminist fantasy going in. I just didn't know that it was that feminist heavy and not very much actual, epic fantasy-ness going on, if that makes any sense. So I then have started The Stolen Heir, and I've listened to about 20%, and I was jiving with it at first. Now I'm just kind of confused. I am not quite sure what to think about this right now. Here's what I know. There's a girl who was supposed to marry Oak, who is the Prince of Elfheim, and they didn't when they were younger, and she ran away, and now she was taken captive, and then she was saved by him, and now they're going on a journey to fight someone. That's what I know. My dog is crazy. That's what I know, and I'm going to keep reading, and hopefully some of it will make a little bit more sense, or I'll just start jiving with the characters. I don't know. It's been a minute since I've read the Cruel Prince trilogy, and not that this in any way, shape, and form has actually been that connected so far to that trilogy, just that, it has Oak in it. We're in the same world, but we'll have to see how I feel about it. If it doesn't pick up for me in the next, I don't know, 20%, I will probably DNF. So there's that. Okay, so it's not that much later than I last talked to you, and I am going to DNF The Stolen Heir, and it has nothing to do with I don't know, I just wasn't jiving with the book, and I wasn't jiving with the characters. I liked the Cruel Prince series when it came out. I have the books still up here on my shelf, but I just was not jiving with these characters, and so if I don't jive with the characters, I'm trying to do better about, DNFing if I'm not having a good time. So that means in this vlog, in this new releases vlog, I have attempted to read 4 new releases, and I have DNF'd 2 of them.
Let's recap. The first new release I tried to read was Liar, Dreamer, Thief by Maria Dong, and this one was a little bit, I thought I was getting something when I was actually going to get something else. So this was more of a mental health exploration than a mystery thriller, which was kind of what I thought it would be majority of, but no, it does have mystery thriller elements, but it's a lot about mental health. And at the time I was reading it, my mental health was not very well, so I decided to go ahead and DNF that book, but it's nothing towards the book. I didn't finish the book. I don't know how it is as far as mental health representation and all of that, but I would recommend it if you are looking for a mental health exploration with some mystery thriller elements. The next book I read was, and the first one I completed was Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies. And this book was, I ended up giving it 4 stars. I kind of battled between a 3 and a 4, and if I was giving half stars, it would be a 3.5. It started out very slow to me, but then it picked up the pace, and then by the end, I think it was a little bit too fast paced. So this is going to clearly be a series of cozy fantasy books that's following our main character, who is kind of doing research on fairies to put in her encyclopedia, and there's some romance with one of her colleagues, and there's fairy stories in there. What's not to like about that? And I'm not generally a cozy fantasy reader, so I would recommend this if you like cozy fantasy. The next book I read was The Daughters of Izdahar, and this one I gave 3 stars just because, again, my expectations of what I thought it was going in, it wasn't. And so I knew that this was a feminist fantasy going in, as I said previously. However, I think it leaned a lot heavier on the women's right part of it and less on the fantasy. I would have liked to have gotten more of the fantasy, maybe like an equal blend, but this was if you're looking for a feminist fantasy, this certainly should check your boxes. But if you're looking for like a really epic fantasy, this is not that. It is a duology. I'm not quite sure if I'm going to continue on or not. We will kind of have to see. And then, of course, I DNF'd The Stolen Heir, which I just talked about. So that means that here I've read 4 new releases and I've DNF'd 2 of them. I'm actually proud of myself for DNFing more books this year because it's helping me have a better year. I still think I'm waiting too late to DNF them because as it stands right now, I'm kind of in a reading slump because I feel like I have attempted to read a lot of books and they haven't gone my way. Not just for this vlog, but, other books I've read this month that hasn't been for this vlog. And I don't know. I'm proud of myself for DNFing more, but I think I need to work on DNFing earlier. Only give it a little bit before, I get myself into a reading slump. And I'm just not enjoying what I'm reading and I'm wasting my time. Anyway, all that to say, I was 50% on the new releases that I chose to read this month. I'm not soured on new releases. I am going to continue to read them, and we'll see kind of how 2023 goes. What new releases have you guys read? Which ones are you looking forward to? Let me know in the comments below.